Hi there, welcome to a new video. This week we are in the classroom, we're doing some theory work, and we're going to be talking about digital file formats for comics. So tonight we're going to briefly look over what we mean when we say digital file format, and we'll look at the first of 4 options. So we're looking at the actual format of data that makes comics, i.e. the image with the text packaged up as something that you can look at. We're not talking about a platform of distribution. So like Webtoons and Tapas, they're platforms. You put your comic on there, it gets seen by people. This is people effectively, what we're talking about is people getting your comic file and viewing it in some way. So why bother? What's the point? Well, it's sad to say this, but people are increasingly switching over to digital means of comics. I personally prefer a physical thing you can hold in your hand, but there's an increased potential readership here. We've got barely any digital distribution costs because you're sending an electronic file somewhere. There's no print run. Once you've made your print comic, you've got all the assets you need for digital. It's incredibly cross-platform. You can do things like make versions of the file for different languages. So you could have a digital file with, say, English text in, and then a digital file with, say, French in, and people can choose the language that they're most comfortable reading. You don't then have to pay for 2 print runs for 2 different languages. It's relatively straightforward to potentially crowdsource your translation. There's a artist, David Revoy, French comic book artist. He does a series called Pepper and Carrot that is translated into a number of different languages, and that's sort of done sort of programmatically. And I'll put a link to his Twitter in the show notes so you can have a look at some of his work. He's great. He uses a lot of open source software, which we'll talk about in a second. Okay, so we've looked at why it's useful to sort of think about digital comics. So let's find out what formats we've got to play with. Right, so first up, we've got the CBR and CBZ files. Then we've got PDF files, EPUB files, and then you have just images. So you could just literally put your image out there on a platform like Tapastic, or on your own website, or on Twitter, or on Facebook, or on Tumblr, or DeviantArt, and as long as people can get to it and consume it there easily, that's digital distribution. There's also a proprietary format, so you could package your comic for ComicHaus and it could be distributed via their own proprietary platform, and it might have lots of extra features like the ability to sort of have a guided view. The problem with a platform like ComicHaus is ain't going so well for me right now, and this sort of brings us up to our next point, which is free. Most of these formats are free. Some of them are free as in beer, and let's just have a look at the formats. So PDF is free as in beer, CBR free as in beer, CBZ free as in free and open source, and EPUB is in free and open source. So what does that mean? Well, essentially it means there's no cost for you. It doesn't cost you money to make a PDF file. You can make a PDF file from like a printer server or from a dedicated piece of software, like something like InDesign. Other pieces of software are available, and in future episodes we'll look at those. But the source code isn't free, so you couldn't fork it. You couldn't make your own version of the file format, or even of an exporter. You're using proprietary software that is just given to you for free. But the keys to the kingdom are still held by the originator of the code. But it's free software, so what's the worst that could happen? Well, you could have something that happened with Adobe with their Pantone colors, or even something like Peloton. They decided to make some software changes, which meant that you couldn't just do a free run unless you had a subscription to them. Having paid what, the best part of $4,000 for a treadmill, you couldn't use it when you wanted to. So there's there's a sort of a warning there, I guess. Anyway, enough of this. Let's get started with our first digital file format we're looking at this week, which is the CBR and CBZ formats. Now, this is probably the easiest way to package a digital file. You can create it on any platform. I've made them on Windows and Linux because those are my main platforms, but the software required, you could find that easily on a Mac. It can be read in the vast majority of comic reader software, so if you have an Android tablet or an iOS device like an iPad or an iPhone, you should be able to look at the same file on both on a dedicated comic book reader app. So how do we make one? Well, let's go and find out, shall we? Okay, so we're here on the desktop, and I've got a digital file here. This is a really old comic I made ages and ages and ages ago. It's called Buddy Story, and I'll show you a bit of it later on, but let's have a look at how it works. One thing you have to realise is that Buddy Story, and this CBR thing, is essentially a zipped archive file. In this case, it's a CBR because it's a RAR file, right? CBZ, done with zip files. So basically, you make a compressed file, you add your files to it, you rename the extension, you're done. That's it. Let's have a look at what the contents are like. So sequentially, we've got a name, in which case it's PG for page, and then we have a counter. That's our front cover, inside cover, page 1, page 2, page 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on and so forth. You add them to the file, they automatically sort themselves because it's numeric, and that's it. That's all you need to do. So let's have a look at this on a couple of readers, shall we? Okay, so this is the CBR file that we saw earlier, and we're now looking at the compiled file on a comic book reader app on a tablet and on a phone. As you can see, functionality is the same. Same for both. Yep. Okay. So the main difference between CBR and CBZ is basically the compressions used. If you're looking for something that's completely open source, then you go CBZ. If you're not that fussed, CBR. Ultimately, it's not difficult to sort of uncompile these back into your source pages, so it's relatively easy to sort of make new CBRs, compile new ones together. You could potentially get a bunch of books like this. If, let's say you've made a bunch of digital files, as long as you put them in sequence and name them sequentially, then you could actually append another story at the end of this, or we could actually put this in and we could put this in the middle of something else, and it could be like an anthology, a digital anthology. So yeah, anyway, that's this week's episode. Next week we'll probably look at PDF files. Hope you enjoyed it then. If you like this or found it interesting, like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff, and we'll see you in the next video. Alright, take care. Alright, bye now.